Today I am going to do the first one, which is introduction with a story. All of us love stories. Storytelling is now getting into the business arena where people are teaching you how to tell stories when you start a presentation. That's become a kind of industry. So stories are one of the key ways in which to engage attention. Hi everyone, this is Usha Pandit, your Mind Springs English teacher. We are doing a series of videos for the history teacher. Last time we said that history and English and arts can be one single unit and you can actually save time and make your classes richer and more interesting and more engaging for your children if you use certain strategies. Today I am going to talk to you about how to start the history lesson. So if you are going to write the title on the board, ask children to turn their pages to a certain number and then start reading out from the text, it's the best way for children to switch off immediately because it's boring. It is boring. Just sit in a class like that yourself and you will realize that your attention is fleeting away. So I suggest you start it in a variety of ways, and today I am going to do the first one, which is introduction with a story. All of us love stories. Storytelling is now getting into the business arena where people are teaching you how to tell stories when you start a presentation. That's become a kind of industry. So stories are one of the key ways in which to engage attention. Why is that? That is mainly because when you tell a story, there is always a certain tension that is created, a certain area where you are not sure about what will happen next. And then there is a release of tension that creates a certain satisfaction. This is why we love stories. History is full of stories of this kind of tension, whether it doesn't have to be a full-blown war, but if it's a conflict, if it's an issue, if there is trouble in the land, if whatever, if everything had been peaceful and good and quiet, and then the king lived and the king died, nobody would read that history. So history is full of excitement, right? You cannot bring that excitement by opening books to page 36 and reading out from there in staid English about a king or a civilization or an era or how something was made. You just can't do it. So rely on the story. What kind of stories? You can bring any story to class depending upon the theme of your text. What are you teaching? What is the theme? What is the idea? Is it about greed? Is it about power? Is it about poverty? Is it about intrigue? Is it about cruelty? What is it? And you can bring something to class that is interesting. There could be stories that the children know, like it could be an Akbar Birbal story or Chanakya or Tenali Raman, or it could be a story from Mahabharata or Ramayana, anything that suits that theme of the story. So if you are using a story on, let us say, Hitler, you might want to talk about how Hitler got his recruits in and how he encouraged them, he patted them on the back, he caressed their egos, and then he would strike. Or he would do the opposite, he would strike and make them afraid and make them worried, and then he would stroke. So the strike and stroke method that he used was very powerful. Now this is a story that all the children will look at you agog. They are not going to say, oh, I am so bored, I don't know what she is doing. Nobody will do that because you are telling them something from human psychology. of how striking and stroking has been used by a large number of people. It's a police technique, for example. Policemen do that. They make the criminal sit there for investigation and they beat him up, and then they are very kind. There's a good cop, bad cop. One guy will beat him, the other one will come and say, don't worry, you'll be okay. And that has a greater impact on his psyche than if they straight away tried to get a confession out of him. If you tell them stories like this, they are interested because it's so out of the ordinary. You mention a film that shows you something like this, which they have all seen, and there you go, you don't even have to tell the story. They will tell you the psychology of how the police get a confession. So you can do that, okay? The other stories would be stories of innovation. So for example, when the motor car was first started, the did you know is a great hook. Did you know meaning, if you don't know, then you should hear this because it's so amazing. So that is something that will hook children. So did you know that when the motor car was invented, they used to park the car miles away, get out of it and show their hands to tell the people on the other side of the road that they are not in danger. So the motor car was seen as a killer machine. They were asked to drive at 10 kilometers an hour. So there were certain stories that are attached to that, very interesting. Because today we are going on autobahns and we are doing a speed of 180. So how times have changed. So this might be an interesting one to start your lesson on innovations. Or you might want to talk about the computer, how the first computer that was built by Charles Babbage was so huge that it took up 7 floors. And it did a mere mathematical calculation that had people running up and down to find out what the answer was. And they were so excited about it. Today, we've got small chips and we are talking of planting it in our heads so that we don't even have to use a machine. So again, you have got you have to grab interest. Otherwise, you are starting with a page, a dead page of history. How do you expect anyone to enjoy your lesson? So don't ask how do we engage kids. This is one big way. I'm going to show you several ways, probably 8 or 10 ways on how to engage kids. This is the first part of my lesson. If you look at stories of historical stories, there are several. So during the Byzantine War, they had what we call we had the grenade. The grenade is one where it's like what they call, I think they used to call it Bairangi. So you put a big ball that is inflammable and then you shoot it out. So this was called the Greek fire. And the assembly of that machine was so carefully done. And the formula of how you make that powder was even more secret. So people tried to find out how they were doing it and they just couldn't do it. So when you fired from the ship, they kept the machine, the front of the ship and sides of the ship, and you fired, the other ship used to catch fire. That fire could even float on water, so they didn't know what they had put into it. And it was much later that they found that it was made of saltpeter and quicklime and raisins. Simple one. Now people who tried to make it made it so wrong that their own ships caught fire when they tried to shoot. Again an interesting story. War stories are very interesting. War videos are very interesting. Take small clips and show it and you've got the kids. So therefore guys, the imagine is another one. An imagine story. Imagine if there was social media during Mahatma Gandhi's time. Do you think people would have let him work like he did? Or do you think they would have criticized and trolled him, and there would have been factions pro and anti, and they would have fought so much on social media that it would have been impossible for the man to work? This might be an imagined one, and then you can leave it open to debate to find out what they have to say about how social media has actually affected the work of certain politicians. Great fun, you've got them. Now your lesson might be a lesson on social media, your lesson might be a lesson on Gandhi, your lesson might be a lesson on political climate in some country. It doesn't matter, you've got them. Now they are open to the lesson. There's a way of doing the lesson also, the pedagogy, but that's another story. But the opening, try and get historical stories, try and get anecdotes, try and get stuff that they have not heard before, watch a clip and you've got them. Okay? So history lessons henceforth should not be boring. The story is available. Thank you.